Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a show that delivers on all sorts of fronts in all sorts of ways. And many people are asking me, what exactly is Victoria Rumble Room?
Right.
Well, it's a video podcast. It's a vodcast. And that's the vehicle we're using to deliver all sorts of information on Victoria, Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, the wide world. I'm Robin Adair, and across town, speaking of the wide world, way across town in Saanich is my co-host with the most, the Croatian sensation himself, John Jurisic. And John, there is, as usual, a lot going on.
Every 10 minutes, some kind of new issue that tops the last issue. We're essentially a Zoom call that's turned into like a little mini online TV station. That's what a vodcast is. It's a simply taped audio with video attached. And you and I have enough courage to do that very well because we've attracted a ton of people. So let's start to dig into some of these issues, Robin. There's still quite a bit of buzz, as there will be, I think, all summer, about these protests on the highway. And most recently, about Red, the activist, who decided to sit on top of a ladder to really deliver the message. You know, Robin, apparently this activist, this fellow who's hurt himself, he's also been part of the Fairy Creek blockades. Fellow's broken his pelvis. It could take up to 6 months to recover. He says it might be longer. And, it's unfortunate. And Robin, look, nobody wants anyone to get hurt here. Nobody wants to be injured in the course of expressing our viewpoints. But let's read the room, please. Okay, we've got years of anger built up over the health issues, global issues, economic issues. And then you put up a blockade. People already angry about this way of delivering a message in front of the ferry, which they clearly are trying to catch. So can we, what the hell are they thinking, right? Read the room, folks. You're going to be risking your lives for protesters if you sit on a ladder or put yourself in front of a vehicle or et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how this kind of strategy is actually helping the old growth protesters reach their objectives.
I don't see it either, John. And zealotry leads to a lot of problems, I believe. And we see another example in one of the people that actually has organized this group, these old growth protesters who've been blocking highways. And before that, they were blocking logging roads. And this guy had to actually turn himself in to the Canadian Border Agency, and that can hardly be a surprise because he's a foreign student. He's not a Canadian student. He faces possible deportation, and I think for good reason. Zain Haq is from Pakistan. He's currently studying third year at SFU, and he signed a waiver when he came to this country saying that he would not break Canadian laws. And guess what he's done since he's been here? He has been arrested 10 times for civil resistance at a climate protest. And he is currently facing 5 charges of mischief.
No.
So, I mean, come on. His supporters, they're shaken. He's surprised. I don't see how they can be. Now, Zain Haq is a visitor to this country. He's not a citizen. He shouldn't be surprised at anything that's coming down right now. But, I also believe that this is something that they see as an opportunity to get their word out. This is publicity. It draws attention in much the way that blockades do. They're trying to get people to tune in to what they're saying in terms of their protest. And so, in some ways, this is all working out the same way and the same strategy as blocking those roads.
Where people find out slowly that what is stereotypically known as like nice Canadians aren't that nice, and we instead have a very real problem of entrenched power in the country where a society is refusing to address that we're faced with the greatest criminal government in UN history, and we're going about our day without recognizing that.
Robin, I've got 4 kids, and I mean, if any one of them had arrested 10 times, 5 charges of mischief, actually not a citizen of the country, they're doing this in another country, I would say to them, that's wrong. That's unacceptable. That's not the way that we conduct ourselves.
I'd say get out of there. You're going to get arrested. You're going to get thrown in jail.
Right. These are not different rules for him. It's for all of us. That's the way Canada is. We're extraordinarily tolerant. I don't think that his civil disobedience, I mean, I don't know. I've never been there. I don't think that if he'd done the same thing in Pakistan, that he would have received as much due process as he does here. I don't think so. He and the entire movement should know better. I don't know why I'm doing this. This is not the way to win an argument. Honestly, I don't know who is now saying after all of this, well, I really support these folks. You know, he's being he's suspicious. He thinks he's facing deportation for political reasons. No, you're not, Zane. It's the way we operate. It's the way civil society operates.
I agree, John, and we could go on and on this, but I'm sure Zane will give us many more opportunities on future shows. So let's move on at this point to the number one issue facing the province, and that's got to be the BC doctors shortage. Almost 1 million British Columbians without a family doctor. It's a terrible issue, and now it appears that the British Columbia government is acknowledging this in a very public way and are looking to do something about this. They've taken some action. But the question is it the action the doctors actually want? The health ministry has let 175 new family practice UBC graduates know that they will receive a $25 bonus. They'll receive help with student debt if they sign a contract to provide GP services. And they also get a starting salary of $295,000 a year. And it sounds like this is great, except it doesn't address the fact that they still have to pay for their overhead. They still have to deal with a lot of paperwork they don't get paid for. It's a step in the right direction, but is it enough? So we asked Camille Curry from BC Healthcare Matters what she thinks about this new offering.
Front page story in the paper. It looks like the government's blinked, or have they? I mean, how do you view this step being taken by the government saying, here's an immediate way that we can entice people to return to family practice?
Yeah, so I agree. It's an immediate reaction, and I think it's an immediate reaction to the pressure that they've been feeling, the pressure from the citizens, from the doctors' organizations, from everyone that is asking for more from this government. But I have serious concerns about it. So once again, it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction and a knee-jerk plan. This is not the kind of plan that we have asked for. We have said that we want plans to come forward for addressing this crisis, but we want the plans to incorporate collaborating and discussing with organizations that need to be consulted and consulting with citizens about what the needs are. We also want to ensure that there is accountability, which once again, this plan seems to miss that. We also want transparency. And I think it's evident in itself that transparency has been entirely missed when an individual shows up at a meeting and presents something that nobody else was aware was even coming. So I don't see this as a solution. I see this as another knee-jerk reaction. I see this as the Ministry of Health trying to get ahead of the pressure they're feeling. So I think keep up the pressure. We're going to keep up the pressure. And we want plans to come forward that include collaboration, transparency, and accountability.
So how do you think residents are viewing this today? As they read this, the chance to sign a contract, they get some of their debt paid for, they get a $25,000 bonus. I mean, are they going to take this seriously as an offer?
I think that at first read, citizens might for sure see this as an option that is good and great and can provide doctors, and I'm sure doctors are going to jump on it, is probably where their thought patterns might go. But I hope that some of the information that my group has tried to share will also get people to ask more questions. Ask questions about how did it come about, and is it truly what the physicians want, and is it truly what's going to provide for us in the state that we're in right now? I hope that citizens will also consider that this plan, this proposal, looks incredibly appealing. So then don't we want to ask ourselves, why is it that all the physicians are not jumping on it?
So What do you think the doctors are taking away from this? Do they think of this as a first offering? This is an opening for negotiation?
I think that, number one, I think they've been offended. I think they were offended right off the bat, because when you don't even talk to the individuals that are affected by a contract proposal like this, then you don't start off with a good foundation. So I think they're concerned about whether the questions that they have are going to be listened to, are going to be considered, and whether amendments will be made. I don't think that they're terribly comfortable with the way the contract came across, and I don't think that, actually I know from what I've heard from residents and from doctors that are new to practice, they don't like that this feels like an ultimatum, that they have been told you take this contract or there might not be anything else after.
But obviously the government is feeling some pressure, and they do want that headline story.
Absolutely. They've gotten their headline, but I'm thinking, hoping that the attention that they're going to draw from this is not going to be exactly what the Ministry of Health had planned. And maybe this will teach them that they need to listen, they need to be accountable, and they need to be transparent, because we are here watching all the time.
Robin, so great to hear from Camille. I personally am very proud. Proud that the Victoria Rumble Room is allowing a place for these issues to be voiced. This particular one, this one is so personal, right? You're sick, and then you can't get a doctor. It's like insane. So glad that we're providing an avenue for this issue to be heard, and other massively disruptive, important, upsetting issues. One of those is obviously the war in Ukraine.
And we've been covering that on a regular basis as well, John. And one of the latest chapters, of course, has been Stu Young, the mayor of Langford, leading a group all the way to Ukraine. They are there, or on their way there as we speak. And it's great to see them showing this kind of leadership.
That's right, Robin. Stu Young, as you mentioned, leading a 4-person humanitarian initiative to Ukraine. They'll meet officials. They're going to be setting up a sister city to Langford. We hope we get a report soon. We hope they're safe. We hope they get back. So for sure, can't wait to hear more about that trip.
Absolutely. And Godspeed to this group of islanders, and great to see them lending a helping hand. Congratulations to the hundreds, perhaps thousands of people on Vancouver Island and certainly across British Columbia who are reaching out to help Ukrainian refugees who are arriving in large groups now, and they're arriving every day, and they definitely need our support. In Victoria, there's a long list of people hoping to find refuge here, and the local Ukrainian Cultural Centre is working around the clock to help find places for them to stay and even jobs if possible. So it's a big task. Here to talk more about it is Devon Goldie. Let's zoom her in.
And now joining us from the Victorian Ukrainian Cultural Centre is President Devon Goldie. Welcome to the Rumble Room.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Your association for years has served as a social and cultural outlet for the local Ukrainian community with lots of dinners, cultural events. But now you've become a center of volunteers for this the consequences of this war. You have crisis workers working with you. You're managing incoming refugees. How has this adjustment been, Devon?
You summed it up really well. It's been such a change of perspective and mandate for us. This all has really been a massive learning experience, and it's been a steep learning curve too. When I got involved with the board a number of years ago, it was because of my passion for the culture. And, I think that's still a huge part of what we're doing, but never did I think any of us expect that this would be the trajectory that the Cultural Centre would take. But at the same time, I don't think that we could be doing anything else. This war, as much as, the war has been ongoing for 8 years, and we knew that things were ramping up, and we did expect an increase in, Russian aggression and very likely a further invasion. We truly didn't expect this scale. and such a widespread attack all at once. I personally was expecting Russia to continue pushing in from the east. So when they made such a widespread attack and started dropping, artillery all over the country, it was shocking. And the mass exodus, of course, makes perfect sense. And our community, many of us who are still personally connected to Ukraine, and others who are a few generations back, of course, feel deeply, deeply connected to the country and to our families and our friends. And everyone wants to help. It's actually been really, really heartwarming to see how much the community has rallied together and done. It's actually pretty incredible to see, when a group of passionate people come together, how much can be accomplished in a small amount of time.
We've seen this in different ways, in different situations, and I think it's the human condition that we seem to do our best when things are at their worst. And you guys are doing fantastic work. There was a wonderful article Jack Knox wrote recently in the Times Colonist, which really, I think, talks about the wider support the Ukrainian community is getting right now in southern Vancouver Island and British Columbia and Canada in general. And he was talking about the fact that in Victoria, or at least the South Island, there's a huge waiting list of people wanting to come into this area. And you've got this very tough job. It's almost, I would say, a daunting job to try to make these links, because you don't really want to say no to people, do you?
No, yeah, that's exactly right. It's really challenging. And of course, Victoria has had a housing crisis for a long time. And so is British Columbia. We're not necessarily the best place to be accepting folks, but at the same time, we so desperately want to help. And there actually are a surprising amount of people who have stepped forward saying that they want to open up their homes, but we're also recognizing that we're limited in terms of resources. I had a really interesting conversation with Minister Cullen the other day, and he was saying that it's interesting because in other provinces, they don't have this same problem with housing, compared to places like Manitoba or, even the Atlantic provinces. They're happy to have people come because they have all of these houses available. But that's really not the case for us. So unfortunately, we've really had to be creative, and we've unfortunately had to put a bit of a triage system into place for sort of managing these folks who want to come in, because unfortunately, we can't just get everyone in immediately. It's not like we have oodles of housing and oodles of people just at the ready. So we really prioritize cases on an individual basis, looking at who has the most need. Single mothers with kids are very, very, very high up on our priority list. People with disabilities, seniors, those who don't necessarily have support in other ways. Whereas whole families, we have a little bit lower on the priority list. And then single men are also a little bit lower. It all sort of depends on their needs and also what resources they have. But it's a challenging process. We've got a really fantastic team that is working on matches pretty well 24/7. And it's a really difficult job, and we couldn't do it without our volunteers.
Devon, that's great. That's great news. Recently, people lined the streets of Victoria to show support and solidarity with the people of Ukraine and obviously yourselves. Are a lot of non-Ukrainians still reaching out with support and taking in refugees?
They are, yeah, definitely. I've been really, really overwhelmed and pleasantly surprised by how many people who aren't affiliated with the Ukrainian community in any way have been coming out in droves to support. Lots of other ethnic communities have been really, really supportive as well, of course. We've received so much support from, the Polish community and even, the Filipino communities and, all sorts of different communities, the Sikh community. So that's been really wonderful. And that has continued, maybe slowed down a little bit, especially in terms of hosting. But I think that has more to do with the fact that there's not a lot of room in Victoria, as opposed to there's not people that want to help. But now we're getting to the place where we're starting to look at rentals. And, the way that we organize our program is we have hosts provide 3 months of free house and free food and accommodation, all of that. But after 3 months, the hope is that we'll have been able to help these people get on their feet enough that they're able to move into a rental unit, hopefully something that's not too expensive, but start to get on their own feet. So now that we're starting to look into moving folks into rentals, I'm hoping that there'll be more people stepping forward. Because, it is a big ask to ask someone to provide not only food, not only housing, but also food for 3 months.
It's a big job. I'm curious if you could maybe share with us some of the stories you're hearing, or some of the cases that you're dealing with. I think we have this sort of vision that these people have arrived, and of course the ones they interview so often on television speak some English and are educated, and people come and they have university degrees, and they have proficiency in computers and all sorts of things. But those are the ones that are, of course, the low-lying fruit for the media. If they speak English right away, let's put them on. I mean, could you talk about how tough is it for these people that are arriving, and what kind of condition are they in? Are they totally overwhelmed when they get here? Is it really a person by person basis on how they're coping? And I guess the final part of that is, what are their expectations? Do they think they're going to be here for a short time or a long time? I mean, how is this all going back and forth between them and the people that are trying to help them?
That is such a good question. Yeah, it is different person to person, but I would say largely people are very, very overwhelmed when they get here. And like there's a level of gratitude, but also a tremendous level of just being shell shocked and overwhelmed. It's like they've stepped into another world, and especially for the first couple of weeks, it's a lot for them to process. Especially those who aren't fluent in English or don't have, at least a baseline level of English. And we have a surprising amount of people who have absolutely no English, and that's a real struggle, especially even just for placing people with a host family. We have a limited number of hosts who actually have some Ukrainian or Russian, and then when you're trying to place somebody who doesn't speak English, that can be a big challenge. But that being said, I think people are doing a really great job of, once they've had a little bit of time to settle and start to process, get everything that they need done. People have been finding jobs right away, which is really wonderful. In terms of how long people are planning to stay, that is such a hard question. And I don't know that there really is a definitive answer on that. I think there's a lot of people who would like to go back and, pick up their lives as possible. Once the war is over and it's safe, I think that a lot of people are going to want to go back. But it's also so hard to know when that could be. That could be tomorrow, although I don't think that's very likely, or that could be a few years from now. So I think it's hard for people to make concrete plans beyond, a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months out right now.
Well, thank you, Devon, Goldie, and all the people involved in supporting the refugees from Ukraine. It's an amazing task, and it makes you feel good to see this kind of altruism going on. As you've mentioned earlier in the show, John, a lot of people have certainly been feeling roughed up by the pandemic and the economy and all the things going on, but people still reach out and care for others. And, I do hear some locals saying, well, if you're going to help all those people from Ukraine, why aren't you doing more for people at home? And it's true. There are people at home that need our support. We do have a lot of social agencies. There are a lot of people out there volunteering to do their best with the homeless and people who are down and out, people with addiction issues. All these things are happening, and no one's saying we shouldn't do lots for our local population, but I suggest we can do both. And that's pretty well the way I see it on that, John, and it's pretty well time to wrap. So if you could just again tell people how they can join the Rumble Room, follow the Rumble Room, support us, because we appreciate the over 500,000 folks that have tuned into various Rumble Room offerings over this past year and a bit.
Yeah, just before I do that, a little bit of a follow-up to your point. We, as a Canadian society, provide enormous amounts of money to the less fortunate through our taxes. And folks don't equate that sometimes to some of the other things that they're comparing this to. Definitely a lot of volunteer money and a lot of sponsorship money is going to other issues, but a voluminous amount of money is going towards issues in our own society, in our own community, and it's going through our taxes. And so that kind of money, so I don't entirely buy that argument. It's presented to me, but nonetheless, if you disagree with me, you can voice that opinion on one of multiple channels that we distribute. Victoria Rumble Room are, you know, the beating heart of this vodcast is obviously Facebook, and then of course lots of activity on Twitter now. That Twitter account's really starting to get very vibrant, and all of our interviews and clips are on our YouTube site. And as I had just mentioned, you have an opportunity. Our listeners, by the way, thank you for listening to everybody who listens and
watches, John. They watch.
Exactly. You can tell
it's a video podcast. They can see us.
That's right.
It's such a revelation.
It is, you know, for those folks who keep wondering, why does he say listen? Why does he say, you know, I did almost 400 podcasts before we started the Rumble Room. So it's a bit of a habit that I got to get out of. So the Victoria Rumble Room News and Views Facebook group is where you can express your opinion. And you can say, John, you're a complete idiot, and I think that what you're saying is wrong. No one will say that, but if you wish, you can. We have yet another, our fifth avenue in which to express your viewpoint on Instagram and TikTok. Okay. So I think we had a great program today. You know, lots of issues to talk about, and we talk about them, don't we? And much more. I know you've got a lot of exciting guests and stuff going on in the future. So for now, I remain the mayor of North Tulip and the Croatian sensation, John Jurisic.
And again, I am merely your humble, ordinary, regular Robin Adair, and rumble on.